Have you ever wondered how Rome managed to dominate the ancient world for centuries? While many empires succumbed to disorganization and lack of resources, Rome had something that others lacked: hidden logistics strategies that ensured its strength and stability. Imagine winning battles without even having to fight, controlling vast territories with precision and turning obstacles into advantages. These same lessons from planning and organizing can change the way you face challenges today. In today's video, you'll discover 10 hidden Roman logistics strategies that have turned Rome into the world's greatest power. If you want to understand the real secret of success, stay with me until the end. Roman logistics was one of the main cogs that supported the most powerful war machine of antiquity. More than brute force, meticulous organization was what allowed Rome's armies to maintain their efficiency in any situation, ensuring not only victory in battles, but also continued dominance over vast territories. To achieve this level of excellence, the Romans created robust supply systems, especially the aurea, strategically located warehouses to store everything the soldiers might need. These warehouses functioned as highly organized supply centers. They were true complexes that stored grains, olive oil, salted meat, dried fruits and wine, all items chosen for their durability and ease of transportation. They weren't there by chance. Their location was carefully planned to ensure that troops had quick access to resources, even in prolonged campaigns or in remote regions. In addition, in times of peace, the aurea were always kept ready, supplied and organized, so that at the slightest sign of conflict, the army could be mobilized without delay. During the wars, the importance of the aurea was even more evident. At the time of the Punic Wars, for example, Rome faced the brilliant strategist Hannibal, who tried to weaken the empire by destroying its supply capacity. However, the strategically positioned network of Roman storehouses allowed the army to remain strong and prepared, even as Hannibal tried to wear down his forces. This showed that the Romans understood that a military victory was not only dependent on direct confrontations, but also on their ability to ensure that their soldiers never went hungry or ran out of the resources they needed to fight. Have you ever tried to unravel what made Rome the largest empire in the world, but ended up lost in an avalanche of details? Don't worry, you're not alone. Imagine finally mastering the most decisive moments in Roman history, learning about the brilliant strategies of generals like Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus, and understanding how their tactics shaped the fate of the world. With that in mind, I created the digital book, The 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire, where you will have access to a clear, objective analysis full of exclusive curiosities. Discover how Rome won battles considered impossible and become a true expert in Roman military history. Don't waste time. Access the pinned comment and guarantee your copy right now. Enjoy it before the units run out. Another important aspect was the function of the aurea in times of apparent calm. When the legions were stationed in far-flung provinces, far from the heart of the empire, these storehouses ensured that the soldiers maintained their readiness. It was a matter of survival and efficiency. The army needed to be well equipped at all times, no matter how far away it was from Rome. These depots were regularly stocked to ensure that troops were never surprised by a lack of supplies, even in regions where conditions were difficult. The logistical efficiency of the Romans went beyond the construction of warehouses. They also mastered the transport and distribution of resources in an exemplary way. Careful management allowed food and supplies to reach the troops quickly, even in hard-to-reach places. This was part of a broader strategy that included the use of the famous Roman roads, infrastructure that connected virtually the entire empire. But the logistics did not stop there. There were also many ingenious tactics that made the Romans overcome the most complex challenges. How did they handle campaigns in enemy territory or in extreme conditions? The answer lies in the details of his military strategy, which turned every challenge into an opportunity to reinforce his dominance. Before continuing, I saw here you forgot to subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss all the content we always bring about Rome. Imagine the scenario. Hannibal, the brilliant Carthaginian general, advances through Roman lands like a destructive storm. He burns crops, destroys villages, and cuts off supply routes, all in an attempt to crush Rome not only by force, but by hunger and desperation. His goal was simple: to make the mighty empire bow, not only in battle, but also in deprivation. However, he underestimated Rome's greatest weapon, not swords, but its ability to plan and organize. Rome knew that facing Hannibal would require more than bravery. it would require strategy and vision. It was then that the idea of a meticulously planned network of warehouses capable of sustaining his legions in any circumstance emerged. These warehouses were not just granaries, they were logistical fortresses, positioned in strategic locations to resist the chaos caused by the enemy. Inside them, durable food such as grains, salted meat and wine were stored with military precision. Nothing was left to chance. Every sack of wheat and every barrel of oil had a clear purpose: to ensure that Roman soldiers never faced starvation, no matter how difficult the terrain or combat. While Hannibal attacked with strength and speed, Rome counterattacked with patience and method. When he destroyed a supply route, the Romans quickly redirected resources from other warehouses. By the time he tried to encircle the legions, the Roman soldiers were already supplied and prepared to resist. This supply network was a display of strategic intelligence that Hannibal, despite his military genius, could not overcome. But how did this network work in practice? Imagine the Roman legions marching through difficult terrain, from treacherous mountains to wide, dry valleys. Each step was a test of endurance, but at the end of each exhausting day there was a supply point waiting for them. The soldiers found fresh bread, drinking water, and even some wine to regain their energy. It was more than food, it was a gesture of trust. Rome was saying, "We take care of you, so keep fighting." Meanwhile, Hannibal's troops faced increasing challenges. Without a comparable logistical infrastructure, his soldiers relied on looting and improvisation to survive. Food was scarce and morals were unstable. In contrast, the Roman legions were like a tireless machine, powered by a system that never failed. Every warehouse that remained operational, every supply route that remained open, was a quiet victory that weakened the enemy little by little. But this network of warehouses was not just a practical solution, it was also a symbol of resilience. Even under constant attack, Rome showed that it was capable of adapting and overcoming any adversity. Logistics wasn't just a tool, it was the basis of his strength. And while Hannibal tried to turn the battlefield into a territory of desperation, Rome turned the war into an example of organization and determination. Tell me here in the comments if you think there was any better logistics than Romana. Many believe he was invincible. I want to know your opinion. Crassus's campaign against the Parthians and Julius Caesar's victory at Pharsalus reveal how logistics can define the success or failure of a military operation. Crassus, driven by his ambition, made one of the greatest strategic mistakes in history by underestimating the importance of planning. He led his troops into the Parthian desert without adequate resources. Extreme heat, lack of water, and food shortages quickly demoralized his army. His forces, exhausted and ill-prepared, were massacred by the Parthians. Crassus, ignoring the advice of his more experienced commanders, insisted on advancing, which culminated in a devastating defeat that not only destroyed his campaign, but cost him his own life. In contrast, Julius Caesar demonstrated how efficiency and planning can turn challenging battles into historic victories. During Pharsalus's battle against Pompey, Caesar stressed not only his military skill, but also the importance of keeping his troops supported by an organized and effective medical system. He used the valetudinaria, mobile and advanced field hospitals for the time, which represented a crucial innovation in supporting the legions. These temporary hospitals were set up strategically close to the battlefield, ensuring that the wounded received prompt and efficient treatment. These valetudinaria were not improvised. They were staffed with experienced doctors and trained aides who used metal surgical instruments, clean bandages, and herbal medicines to treat wounds. The transport of the wounded was carefully organized, with teams dedicated to quickly removing soldiers from the field and taking them to safe areas in the rear. Not only did this system save lives, but it also kept troop morale high, as soldiers knew they would be cared for if they were injured. At the Battle of Pharsalus, Caesar put this system into practice in an exemplary way. Even amid the intensity of the fighting, the wounded were treated efficiently, ensuring that they could recover and, in many cases, return to fighting. This attention to detail, coupled with his military strategy, ensured his victory against Pompey and cemented his reputation as one of Rome's greatest commanders. The contrast between Crassus and Caesar could not be more evident. While Crassus underestimated the importance of sound logistics and faced the fatal consequences of his negligence, Caesar proved that meticulous organization, especially in medical care, was indispensable to ensure his army's victory and survival. The valetudinaria, with their advanced structure and efficient functioning, raise an important question. How did the Romans create such an innovative system for their time? The answer lies in Rome's constant search for practical solutions and the development of methods that have placed the organization at the center of its military achievements. Before proceeding, I saw here that you forgot to like the video. Help us to always bring you more content about Rome, and leave your like. Foraging was one of the most important and strategic practices of the Roman army, especially in long and difficult campaigns. It consisted of collecting resources directly from enemy territory, allowing troops to supply themselves without relying on long supply routes, which were often targets of ambushes and sabotage. This tactic not only reduced costs and vulnerabilities, but also weakened the enemy by depriving them of essential food and resources. A clear example of this strategy was the skillful use made by Julius Caesar during his campaign in Gergovia. Gergovia presented unique challenges. It was a Gallic fortress strategically positioned in mountainous terrain, which made it difficult to access and conventional logistics. The transport of supplies by the Romans was almost impossible, as roads were often blocked or at constant risk of attack. Caesar, recognizing the difficulty, employed foraging as the primary solution to sustain his troops. He ordered his soldiers to scavenge for food, water, and other necessary items from the surrounding villages, making the most of the resources available in the enemy-held lands. This strategy had a double function. First, it kept Roman troops supplied and ready for combat. Second, it undermined the enemy's reserves, weakening their ability to resist and demoralizing the Gauls. Each resource withdrawn represented an advantage for Rome and a direct disadvantage for the defenders of Gergovia. However, the success of foraging depended on rigorous organization. Caesar understood that without discipline, the practice could spiral out of control, turning his own soldiers into indiscriminate looters. Not only would this damage Rome's reputation, but it could also create problems with the local populations, who could revolt and unite with the Gauls. Therefore, he established clear rules for foraging operations. Soldiers were given specific orders on where and what to collect, prioritizing strategic areas and villages under direct enemy control. In addition, the troops that carried out the foraging were organized into well-armed and disciplined groups, ensuring protection against possible surprise attacks. Caesar knew that these incursions were risky, especially in hostile territory, and so he planned them meticulously. The areas chosen for foraging were not random. They were selected based on their proximity and strategic value, ensuring that collection was efficient and safe. In Gergovia, this approach proved to be essential. The difficult terrain and fierce resistance of the Gauls could have left the Roman army exhausted and demoralized, but foraging ensured that the soldiers remained well-fed and motivated. Even under adverse conditions, Caesar managed to keep his troops operational, while the enemy, weakened by the loss of resources, struggled to resist. Despite its effectiveness, foraging was not a tactic without its challenges. How did the Romans deal with risks and ensure that this practice remained controlled and efficient? The answer lies in the precise methods of planning and discipline that turned even the most hostile territories into sources of survival and advantage for the Roman army. And don't forget to get your digital book 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. It's very important that you get it right now, before the units run out. Imagine an army, thousands of Roman soldiers, positioned around an almost impregnable fortress on top of a hill. Inside, Vercingetorix and his Gallic warriors, besieged and hungry, struggled to resist. Julius Caesar, with his gaze fixed on victory, knew that this would not be a battle of strength, but of intelligence and resistance. The siege of Alesia would become one of the greatest examples of Roman strategic genius. To win, Caesar needed more than sharp weapons and trained soldiers. He needed organization. To surround a fortress meant not only cutting the enemy off of his resources, but ensuring that his own army could withstand weeks or even months of pressure without succumbing to starvation or disorder. That's when rationing came into play. Every item of the supplies, from grains to salted meat, was carefully catalogued and strategically distributed. There was no excess or waste. Each soldier was given exactly what he needed to stay strong and prepared, leaving no room for failure. Meanwhile, inside Alesia, the situation was the opposite. The Gauls, isolated, saw their supplies dwindling rapidly. The despair increased every day. With hunger eating away at his strength, his ability to resist visibly weakened. On the outside, the Romans maintained discipline, relying fully on the system Caesar had put in place. Each meal was more than physical sustenance. It was a reminder that they were under the command of a leader who thought through every detail. But Caesar's genius did not stop at the distribution of supplies. He knew that protecting stocks was just as crucial as maintaining them. To do this, he built a network of fortifications around Alesia, known as the Ring Line. These fortifications not only ensured that the Gauls were isolated, but also protected the Roman storehouses themselves against possible attacks by enemy reinforcements. It was a double barrier, designed to deter any escape attempt from Alesia or outside invasion. These fortifications were a spectacle of military engineering. Walls, moats, and traps were built with precision, completely surrounding the fortress. For the Gauls inside Alesia, it was as if time itself was against them. There was no escape. There was no fighting. Outside, the Romans had enough supplies to wait out as long as they needed. The balance of power was clearly in Caesar's favor. As the days turned into weeks, the difference between the two forces was evident. Inside Alesia, hunger and desperation corroded the spirit of the defenders. Every attempt to break the siege was thwarted by the meticulous defenses of the Romans. Outside, the morale of Caesar's troops remained intact, sustained by the efficiency of a system that ensured that each soldier had what he needed to keep going. The siege of Alesia was won not by brute force, but by Caesar's strategic mind and the Romans' ability to turn planning into a weapon as powerful as their legions. But how did Caesar manage to create such an accurate and effective system in the midst of such adverse conditions? Roman roads were more than routes. They were the foundation of Rome's domination, allowing the empire to expand and sustain itself for centuries. These routes not only connected distant regions to the heart of the empire, but also ensured that troops, supplies, and messages circulated quickly and efficiently. It was as if Rome's entire strength depended on this well-planned and organized network, which was both a feat of engineering and a symbol of absolute control. Each road was built to rigorous standards that combined durability and functionality. Builders would begin by digging into the ground to create a solid foundation on which they would place several layers of gravel, smaller stones, and often large, finely fitted stone slabs. These surfaces, smooth and sturdy, allowed troops, chariots, and pack animals to move quickly in any weather condition. In addition, the roads were slightly sloped on the sides to allow water to drain away while preventing rain damage. Some of the most famous routes, such as the Appian Way, became not only essential for military campaigns, but also vital arteries for Roman trade and administration. However, permanent roads were not sufficient in military campaigns where the terrain was unfamiliar or hostile. In this context, temporary infrastructure played an indispensable role. The Roman legions were accompanied by experienced engineers who could build bridges, makeshift roads, and fortified camps in a matter of days. These engineers transformed natural obstacles into strategic advantages. An iconic example was the bridge over the Rhine River, built by Julius Caesar. In just 10 days, his men created a sturdy structure that allowed thousands of soldiers and carriages to cross, ensuring not only troop movement, but also sending a clear message of power and control. After completing the crossing, Caesar ordered the dismantling of the bridge, highlighting the absolute dominance of the Romans over the adversities of the terrain. Roman military camps were also impressive in their organization and functionality. They were not just resting places, they were veritable fortresses designed to protect troops and supplies. Once a site was chosen for the camp, the soldiers dug moats, erected wooden walls, and built watchtowers. The entrances were strategically placed and protected, while the interior of the camp followed a standardized layout with specific areas for storing supplies, weapons, and spaces for soldiers to rest. This organizational efficiency allowed the army to remain operational even in hostile territory or during long campaigns. These temporary structures were critical to ensuring that supplies arrived safely, even in harsh conditions. In addition, Roman roads and temporary roads built by the legions allowed for the rapid movement of reinforcements, weapons, and food. This gave the Romans a strategic advantage over their enemies, who often struggled to keep their own forces supplied. The importance of these roads went far beyond military use. They were the basis for the efficient administration of the vast empire. Provincial governors could send messages and report problems to the Senate in a matter of days, while taxes and goods circulated in an organized manner. In addition, roads connected cultures, facilitating the integration of different peoples into the Roman system. The economic benefits were immense. as merchants used these routes to transport goods over great distances, boosting trade and prosperity throughout the empire. However, the construction of these roads and temporary infrastructure would not be enough without an impeccable maintenance system. Rome assigned specific teams consisting of workers and soldiers to ensure that the roads remained usable. They were constantly inspected, and repairs were made whenever necessary. This continuous dedication allowed Roman roads to continue to be used for centuries, some of them still in use today, as a testament to the grandeur of the empire. Imagine the vast Mediterranean stretching out as a crucial stage for Roman power. Its waters, churned by unpredictable winds and threatened by enemies and pirates, were much more than an obstacle or a natural frontier. For Rome, the Mediterranean was the key to survival and expansion. Called Mare Nostrum, or Our Sea, it connected distant lands and provided the path needed to transport troops, supplies, and wealth that sustained one of the greatest empires in history. However, this dominance required more than control. It depended on precise naval logistics, which was made clear in the historic Battle of Actium. In the year 31 BC, the Mediterranean became the scene of a dispute that would decide the future of Rome. On one side, Octavian, determined to consolidate his power and end the conflicts that weakened the Republic. On the other, Mark Antony and Cleopatra, whose combined forces posed a formidable threat. Control of the sea would be decisive, as Antony and Cleopatra's fleets depended on constant supplies mainly from Egypt to sustain their war against Octavian. Octavian knew that he did not need only numbers, he needed strategy. His fleet blockaded the ports used by Antony and Cleopatra, cutting off their supply lines. Without Egyptian wheat to feed his troops, and without the materials needed to repair the ships, the strength of his enemies began to weaken. The siege was not only physical but psychological. While Octavian's forces remained well supplied, despair grew among Antony's soldiers and sailors. Hunger eroded morale, and the scarcity of resources made it more difficult to maintain resistance every day. The final battle was inevitable. When the two fleets met, the difference was clear. Octavian's fleet, well organized and equipped, faced a weakened enemy. Although Antony and Cleopatra tried to resist, Octavian's strength prevailed. His victory at Actium was not only a military achievement, but the symbol of how Rome's naval logistics could decide the fate of empires. The importance of Roman naval logistics went far beyond battles. Control of the Mediterranean was essential to the daily functioning of the empire. Grain from Egypt, olive oil from Hispania, wine from Gaul, and minerals from the eastern provinces crossed the sea in a carefully managed net. Ports, such as those of Alexandria and Ostia, were pulsating centers of activity, where ships unloaded and loaded supplies to meet the demands of an ever-growing empire. This network was not merely commercial, it was vital for the Roman legions. During military campaigns, ships transported troops, weapons, and supplies with speed and efficiency. Control of the sea allowed Rome to mobilize its resources in times of war, ensuring its troops received the necessary support to maintain superiority on the battlefield. Rivers such as the Nile and the Danube were also incorporated into this network, serving as internal routes that further connected territories to Rome's logistical system. Moreover, the Roman navy played a crucial role in protecting these routes. Pirates and enemy fleets posed constant threats, and the Romans could not afford interruptions. Regular patrols, well-armed ships, and a prepared fleet ensured that supplies reached their destinations. This maritime control was a clear demonstration of the extent of Roman power. Rome's naval logistics were more than just a transportation system. They formed the foundation that sustained the entire empire. Without it, the provinces could not be supplied. The legions would be vulnerable and cities would face famine and revolts. The victory at Actium was a perfect example of how control of the seas could change the course of history. Roman sieges were complex military operations that relied on detailed logistical planning and flawless execution. Victory in these scenarios came not only from strength, but also from the ability to isolate and weaken the enemy strategically. Two remarkable examples of this approach are the siege of Utica, led by Scipio Africanus during the Second Punic War, and the conquest of the fortress of Masada during the Jewish revolt. At the siege of Utica, Scipio Africanus used logistics as a powerful weapon. The city, located in a strategic position in North Africa, was essential for the control of Carthage. Scipio knew that a direct assault would be risky and could result in significant losses. Instead, he chose to cut off all supply routes to the city, isolating it both by land and by sea. The Roman fleet patrolled the nearby waters, while fortifications and troops blocked all land entrances. This methodical blockade was enough to weaken the defenders, who, deprived of reinforcements and resources, eventually surrendered. This approach demonstrated how efficient logistics could determine the fate of a city without the need for intense combat. Roman engineers began constructing a massive siege ramp using tons of earth and stones to create a direct path to the fortress walls. At the same time, siege engines such as battering rams and assault towers were assembled and positioned for the final attack. The construction of the ramp was protected by archers and troops who neutralized attempts by the defenders to resist. This meticulous work allowed the Romans to turn what seemed impossible into an inevitable victory. When the ramp was completed, Masada's defenses could not withstand the assault. The fortress was taken, showcasing Rome's ability to overcome even the most extreme challenges with organization and discipline. The siege of Masada remains an iconic example of how logistics, combined with innovation and persistence, was the key to Rome's military success. In both Utica and Masada, victory was ensured by the systematic approach of isolating the enemy, cutting off supplies, and using military engineering to overcome any obstacle. Roman sieges were not just battles, they were meticulously planned operations that exemplified the logistical superiority of the empire. Ancient Rome's logistical strategies were the secret that transformed the empire into the greatest power in the world. Impeccable roads, absolute control of the seas, and meticulously planned sieges demonstrate that Rome triumphed not just through strength, but through intelligence and organization. Every detail made a difference, securing victories and centuries of stability. And remember, if you want to learn more about how Rome became the greatest empire of antiquity, go to the pinned comment and grab your digital book 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. Get it today because supplies are limited. If you found it fascinating to discover how these secrets shaped Rome's history, like this video and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating content. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss anything, and thank you for watching. See you next time.